What is up, guys? Rick Hackus here, and today we're talking about the fact that everyone hates The Division. Now, I've made a few of these everyone hates videos in the past, and the reason for them is not to be extremely negative about the video being featured. In fact, quite the opposite. I am surprised at the amount of negativity around these games, even though, in this case, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in both the Division open and closed betas. And yet, a passerby on a Division video might scroll down, see the comments, and think, wow, apparently everyone hates this game. And that's why I'm making this video, to discuss the complaints being brought up about the Division, whether or not they're legitimate, and if they are, what the developers can do to fix them. Now, I'm not trying to convince everyone to like or buy the Division. We're simply talking about the Division, one of the biggest things happening in gaming right now. Now, let's get started with one of the main complaints I see, which is The Division is so boring. Now, this is actually kind of a funny complaint to analyze because on the one hand, there's actually nothing wrong with saying, I find The Division boring. That's a personal preference thing, and in fairness to the people saying that, third-person tactical shooters are relatively slower paced and arguably a little bit more boring than first-person shooters like Call of Duty or Destiny. It's a lot more intense if you're in one of those first-person shooters. You're right in people's face when you shotgun them. There's explosions going off right in front of you. It's a lot more of an immersive experience when you're in first person. Whereas in third person, it's a little less intense when you're fighting the boss cowering behind a wall. However, whereas it is a legitimate complaint to say that I find The Division boring, it's certainly not as legitimate to say The Division is bad because it's boring. It's not The Division's fault for being in the third-person genre. I'm a very eclectic gamer. I play a ton of different games, and I enjoy third-person tactical shooters. I really got into them with Mass Effect, and I'm willing to take on a game that's a little bit more boring to have that tactical advantage, to be put into control when we're talking about who gets the kill and who doesn't. There's a lot more decisions to be made in a third-person game, I find, when you're fighting an enemy. But again, it's not the game's fault for being a third-person shooter. It's your fault that you don't like them. And there's nothing wrong with that, again, but it's not the game's fault. I don't love MOBAs, but I'm not going to go to the League of Legends subreddit and be like 0 out of 10 trash game. I know that it's not the game's fault for being a MOBA. It's my fault because I don't really like MOBAs. Now, moving on, another type of comment that I see all the time is people saying, I hated The Division because I had a terrible time in the Dark Zone. I went in there, I was abused by this one rogue squad over and over and over again, my loot was taken, I just didn't have a fun time, it was terrible. Now, I've kind of got a story to tell around this because originally, when I first started seeing that type of comment, I didn't take them seriously because I was the exact opposite. I had a ton of fun in the Dark Zone, I was always rocking a full squad, and that was because I kind of sometimes, I guess, forget that I am a relatively successful YouTuber, and therefore it's pretty easy for me to put a full squad together. When I was playing on the Xbox One, I would log on, and if I wanted to put a squad together, it would be relatively easy. I have a relatively large friends list and I have a lot of people even just messaging me wanting to play with me. And I know that most people are not gonna have that experience. But for me, again, I threw a squad of 4 together pretty much every time I logged on. And so when I would rock the Dark Zone, it was a great experience because I would have people that I wanted to play with that wanted to play with me. I could, easily vet people to make sure that if you had some idiot who kept shooting people in the Dark Zone for no reason and causing us to go rogue, I could kick him out and get someone else in there fairly easily. However, most people did not have that experience, and it's pretty unfair of me to take that experience that, again, most people are not going to have and use it as kind of a keystone on what I judge other people's experiences, what I compare other people's experiences to. And what really opened my eyes to this was when I got off the Xbox One and actually downloaded the PC version so I could stream on it. And then when I played the PC version, I only had one other friend that I added who I played the console with all the time, and me and him went into the PC version, started from scratch, leveled up to level 8 for the stream, and then went into the Dark Zone, just me and him. And it was a very, very different experience compared to before, where I had access to a bazillion friends and I threw a squad of 4 together no problem. Now we're in the Dark Zone, just 2 people, and we did get picked on by these 3 assholes. There's 3 people that we ran into them a few times, and they were just so annoying, constantly shooting us but not triggering the threshold. Eventually they did kill us, steal our loot, go rogue. In fact, they went rogue enough to cause a manhunt. We ended up killing them, but it was really frustrating because, you know, my only blue weapon at the time was a blue M249B light machine gun, which was great against AI opponents. You could pump 100 rounds into them. However, not so good against other players in the Dark Zone. It just had too much recoil, so these people had way better loot and were able to just kill us over and over again, and it was extremely frustrating. And at that moment, I really kind of felt a lot more sympathy for the people who are having this type of experience all the time. They don't have a big friends list to choose from, and they're not having the best time in the Dark Zone. And so, as a result, I totally understand the type of complaints people are making around this subject. You try out the Division, you go into the Dark Zone, and you have a terrible time, and therefore, you're not feeling too great about wanting to buy or liking the Division. However, when we look at what the developers can do to fix this, they've done almost everything. There's matchmaking in the game. You can matchmake into a squad in the Division. That's one of the main things that a game like Destiny still doesn't have for some of the raids. However, for, again, the Division, they did install matchmaking. Also, when you go into the Dark Zone, you can inspect people walking around you. You can add people into your squad. You can invite people into your squad in less than 10 seconds. You walk up to them, inspect them, invite to squad, and they can join your squad right there instantly. So that's very easy to do. Additionally, proximity chat is always enabled natively. So if you go into the Dark Zone, the main thing I would recommend is have game chat on. You can talk to people, and when you do, when you just talk in game chat, even if people are in parties or in separate parties or not in game chat, because of proximity chat, they will hear you out of their TV. And that was one of the main things we discovered to make things easier, is if you're in game chat, you can say, hey, we're cool, we just want to extract, and people are pretty likely actually to just acknowledge that and be nice.
Yeah, we called them. And we're nice. We're not gonna kill nobody.
Like they're the assholes that were here.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this: the developers have done pretty much everything they can do in order to make your experience in the Dark Zone a little bit better, to ease your way into getting a full squad, aside from actually adding you on their friends list. So some of the responsibility needs to be placed on you. You have the tools to form a full squad. You have pretty much everything you can have. You just need to actually be able to be willing to utilize them. And sometimes you're just going to end up with a shitty experience in the Dark Zone. But the fact that you can enter into the Dark Zone and find everyone doing jumping jacks around an extraction point and everyone is friendly, and then the very next day go in and find this team of rogues that are just being complete assholes, that's actually kind of why the Dark Zone is pretty amazing. It's a different experience every single time because it doesn't rely on game balance or new guns being added to change up the experience. The experience is changed up by the people that are in the Dark Zone every time you play it. The only thing they really do need to add is a system for people who makes them go rogue if they keep shooting someone over and over and over again while not quite reaching those thresholds. Obviously, they're being assholes and the game needs to recognize this. Now, the last complaint we're going to go over is a complaint that I see both in the comment section and especially a lot of bigger YouTubers have made this complaint, and it's that it's kind of ridiculous that you shoot a guy in a hoodie 17 times with an assault rifle and he doesn't die. And the reason for this is simply because of two choices the developers made. On the one hand, they want the Division to be an RPG, and in an RPG, if you just look at it from purely RPG standpoints, this totally makes sense. You can't have guns killing everyone in one shot in RPG. You're generally going to have to shoot an enemy a lot more times. You know, you have those damage numbers pop up to tell you how good your gun is, and that's why you have the whole loot system. Is if every gun killed in one shot, there would be no point in having an actual loot system implemented into the game. So that all makes sense on that hand, just looking at it from RPG aspects. Now, on the other hand, you look at the game purely from a settings perspective. They wanted the setting to be in a very realistic post-apocalyptic New York City. And again, you know, you're walking around New York City, the weather system, the day and night cycle is kicking in. That's all extremely realistic. There's people walking around. That's all fine and good. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when you combine both of the systems. You have the realistic setting, so you're fighting people in hoodies with baseball caps, and then you have the RPG elements where, again, it takes 19 shots to kill someone. And those two aspects don't really mesh together because it's very unrealistic to again have to shoot someone 19 times, to have all this loot system, to go in and, you know, you're trying to fight to free New York City from, you know, these assholes running around the street. You know, it's been taken over by actual criminals, and yet you have to have enough money to buy weapons from the guy in your base. Wouldn't he just give you the weapons? He's like, shit, you're going out there and trying to save the city. Here, have this good assault rifle. That's obviously how it should work in real life. But again, you have those RPG elements. So those two elements, like trying to make it realistic and being an RPG, don't really mesh together. And frankly, the complaints about this are extremely legitimate. These two things don't really work together. However, myself and a lot of other people are willing to look past this. I understand that hoodies aren't bulletproof. However, I'm actually okay, more than okay. I'm glad that we're getting a loot-based shooter that's not in space and not in a fantasy setting. I'm glad that there's a different take on the genre, to put it in a realistic setting, to have a loot-based game with realistic guns, with MP5s, with AK-47s. That's something that really hasn't been done. I would actually rather have that than another Borderlands or Destiny ripoff. The Division has taken loot-based shooters to a different setting, and I'm okay with that. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please remember to rate and share this video. Now if you want to get in touch with me, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can follow as well. Now again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day. Things have changed dramatically for the open beta, and the key to getting the best and easiest and the most loot in the Dark Zone now is